All right, well, my watch is saying 6 o'clock, so I think we'll get started. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a meeting of the Board of Appeals of the City of Holland. Board members are regular citizens of Holland who have volunteered and have been appointed by City Council to consider applications to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Housing Board of Appeals, the Construction Board of Appeals, and for accommodations for persons with disabilities. This will be a meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and one of our applications at the end actually requires us to wear the hat of the Construction Board of Appeals tonight. This board must interpret each application as it relates to city ordinances. This board is not empowered to rezone or to take any action that could be considered rezoning. The presence of 4 board members is required for a quorum. It also takes 4 concurring votes to pass resolutions that either deny or approve applications. And I want to make everybody know that, and I'll bring it up again as we go through these. We only have 4 of us here tonight, so one single dissenting vote, even if it's a 3-1, would mean that it would be turned down. Decisions of the board are final and are effective on the day of such decision. However, applicants may appeal decisions to the circuit court in accordance with state law. When your application is called, we ask that you come to the microphone and state your name and address. We will hear the applicant first, and then anyone supporting the application, and then anyone opposing it. If you elect not to stay for our deliberation and decision, you can call the Community and Neighborhood Services Department tomorrow morning after 8:30 to learn the results. With that said, will our clerk please read the first agenda item?
Yes.
Shall we approve the agenda?
I'm sorry, are we approving the agenda as is? Do we have,
I'd like to make a motion that we move 581 East 24th to the,
He's here right now.
He's
so
here?
we can just, yeah,
all right,
that's
we
why I
got
was
our guy?
checking.
scratch
All right.
that?
All right, so I won't move it.
All right, go ahead, thank you.
581 East 24th Street, and this is application 20.11Z. Tom Hodges, on behalf of Viasat, is requesting a conditional use approval to construct a new satellite access node. The Zoning Board of Appeals may approve this application if certain conditions are met. 39-17.
Okay, and we understand there is somebody here. If there's if the applicant is here, could you please come to the podium? Please remember to state your name and address and explain the application.
Is it possible to run a pre-zone or just to speak to it?
Just speak to it. With the visuals that we have no application. It'll all pop up in front of them.
Right.
They'll have video cameras back there, not video cameras.
We got
but
TVs
screens.
back here.
Okay, cool. Because I did have a thumb drive if we were to do a presentation, but if we can talk to it, that's fine with me too. For the record, my name's Randy S. Jones, project manager for Viasat. We are located at 349 Inverness Drive South, Englewood, Colorado. As is mentioned today, we're asking for a conditional use permit to put a satellite access node at, I don't have the address in front of me, but thank you.
581 East 24th?
581 East 24th, thank you. And it consists of a 6-foot dish sitting on a 2-foot pole, so it's roughly about 8 feet tall, behind a fence, a chain link fence. It takes up eventually 700 square feet. We normally only fence off the first 300 square feet because that's all we really need. And then if we had to expand, I think that I know that we would have to come back and probably reapply or at least amend our conditional use permit that we're asking for today. And we understand that. The site, why do we need it? That site provides satellite wireless broadband internet to the community. The dish doesn't talk to the community, it talks to a satellite. So just a brief on how does that work. So what happens if someone has our service, they have like a small DirecTV dish on their house, let's say. Their computer talks to that dish. That dish shoots up to our satellite that will be launched next year. Then it comes back down to a satellite access node like this one or any others. There's hundreds of these being built throughout the United States, down the fiber line to wherever they're trying to go to the internet, and then back through to the satellite back. Providing comparable speeds to your local cable company or your local DSL. I get asked why we choose particular properties. In this case, the fiber line's there, which is Everstream. It has a very close power source to it. There's a parking lot already there. It doesn't affect any of the existing traffic. It doesn't change any kind of, how could I put it, any other uses of the property. It won't affect the surrounding properties. It's a pretty innocuous design once it's completed. And it's pretty straightforward there, but for the most part, once it's done, most people think it's, the internet, what it is, it's a satellite dish. So on that, I'll answer any questions on a very brief explanation of what we're trying to do with the site.
So I have a few questions
Sure.
for you. I'm looking at criteria that we ordinarily
Mhm.
use to either grant or to deny
Yep.
something like this. So my questions are technical, and I'll ask them to you. Will the proposed use result in any injurious levels of radioactivity, vibration, noise, odor, heat, or any other form of nuisance?
No, there will be no nuisance whatsoever to the environment or to humans.
Okay, will the use cause substantial damage to the value of other property in the surrounding neighborhood?
No, it will not.
Okay. Will the use impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property?
No, it will not. It won't affect how other people use their properties around this property, or affect how this gentleman uses his property.
As I read the maps, it's tucked behind Aldi, very
Right.
isolated.
Yeah, it's very
location.
isolated up against that
You can't even
existing
see
building that's sitting
anything.
right
All
there.
Will there be adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other site improvements provided?
Yes, we use the existing power that is there, the existing fiber that's right at the end of the property that we'll bring in, and then there's already a drive and a parking lot there, so we don't even have to build a driveway or a parking.
Okay.
And we don't visit, just to kind of expand upon that, we only visit it if we have to. So we don't even affect traffic or anything else that's
Okay.
going on over there.
Okay, yeah, it seems to be a real minimum use activity. The next one has already been answered about access and egress. And lastly, will the use conform to other requirements of the zone district, excluding height, area, and off-street parking?
We believe it does. It's much shorter than the other items, and it definitely meets the height requirements there. It's only
Oh.
8 feet tall.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
There's no interference with radios or TVs or just?
No, sir. We actually, on this particular site, we have our FCC approvals on that. And it doesn't broadcast out like a wireless cell site. I was in the wireless world for 17 years. It has a direct beam, we'll call it,
Okay.
to the satellite.
Okay.
It only talks to the satellite.
I assumed that, but I thought I'd ask it straight
No,
up.
it's a good question.
I don't have anything else.
Mr. Chairman,
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sorry, thank you.
Since you're within approximately a mile and a half of the airport, are you under FAA regulations by any chance?
Under our licensing from the FCC, we're not required to light it or anything like that, but we are required not to interfere with any of the communications that goes on, any of the other communications, but we're not required to light it or anything because we're not tall enough.
Being 8 foot tall, I didn't think that.
Yeah, well,
There's a plane that
However-
low, we got issues.
you'd be surprised. I get that question.
However, the radio waves and the transmissions and receivings,
Yep,
how do you not interfere with?
Well, because this is we'll call it a cone, basically, and it goes directly to the satellite. So let's say that site, for the sake of argument, was sitting and shooting it across the airport. Now it's a problem, because now you've got the planes flying through it, and the FCC wouldn't agree to that anyway. We would make our interference requirements that we have. But it shoots directly up. So you'll say, well, what happens if a plane flies through it? When it gets that far up, it's not a problem.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the public hearing. And if there's anybody who would like to speak in support of this, please come forward. Anybody who would like to speak in opposition to this application, they are also welcome. And I'm not seeing anybody moving towards the podium, so I will close the public hearing. And are there any other questions from the board at this time to deliberate? Then I
All
will
right.
be seeking a motion.
I move that the board approves a conditional use for 281 East 24th Street to construct a new satellite access node.
I would second that.
Any further discussion?
I'm good.
Let me give the reasons for my
Go ahead.
motion. The applicant has proven that the proposed use and location will not result in injurious levels of radioactivity, vibration, noise, odor, heat, or any other form of nuisance. The conditional use will not cause substantial damage to the value of other property in the surrounding neighborhood. The conditional use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property. There will be adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other site improvements provided. And the conditional use will conform to the other requirements of the zone district excluding height, area, and off-street parking.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Before you go any further, unless I heard you incorrectly, you stated 281 East, and it's actually
Oh,
581.
581, excuse me.
For the record.
Yes, thank you very much, Mike. 581 East 24th Street.
You pass. You got it.
I have one more question, somewhat similar to that. The comment of has proven that it won't do this, has stated that it will not or something. I don't know if you can say proven before it's actually taken place. You know, that all these things will not happen.
Prove a negative that it can't do that, that it won't do that?
I'll step back, you know what I'm trying to say?
I hear you.
All right.
It's a tough one.
Based on their application, they're attempting to prove it based on the drawings, the site, you know, everything they can provide.
Has stated
don't
that they will
ultimately
comply
have-
according to this.
Yeah, we ultimately never have absolute proof, if that's what you'd have
Yep.
previous to the actual installation.
Choice of words.
So my use of that, I assumed that the city staff had reviewed all of their applications and technical details, and so they passed that standard.
I'm good. Sorry to derail it.
And I will look for a vote then.
All right, so the motion is to approve. Van Antwerp,
Yes?
Bauer,
Yes.
Bedard,
Yes.
and Sork.
Yes.
Okay, vote passes.
All right. And now our next agenda item.
All right, so this is 318 West 35th Street, application number 20.12Z. Calvin Prinz is requesting a variance to install a 6-foot-tall open wrought iron fence in the front yard of his property, where the fence height is limited to a 4-foot-tall open fence. The Zoning Board of Appeals may approve this variance if certain conditions are found to exist. 39-11.
Thank you. All right, is there somebody here from the representing the applicant to come forward? Please state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Faith Prinz. I'm Cal's wife. I live at 318 West 35th Street in Holland, and we are requesting an open wrought iron 6-foot fence on our front property line because we live, well, you saw on the private drive, but according to us, or in our deeds, our front line is going to be the beginning of the low-income housing for Habitat for Humanity and Jubilee Ministries, where they are going to put 42 units. And right now, they are supposed to leave 35 feet of trees and bushes that are there, are supposed to be left there, but I'm not too hopeful on that, so we are requesting a 6-foot fence so that we can keep our properties divided and keep the integrity of our property.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the board to the applicant?
Well, similar as my colleague Fred did with the previous applicant, there's some questions, things that we have to walk through that I'd like to ask you and see how you respond to those.
Okay.
Are there unique circumstances or physical conditions of the property that are not due to the applicant's personal or economic difficulty? Are there unique circumstances or physical conditions of the property that are not due to the applicant's personal or economic difficulty?
I'm not sure I understand you, but that is our front yard. And to look out on 42 units with no really dividing line, I guess usually properties are side by side, but they're building in our front yard. So we would like to keep the separation there.
Okay. Is the need for the variance the result of actions of the property owner or previous property owners?
Well, it's not our actions, it's the actions that the
Well,
city.
we're looking at your property and your
Okay.
ability to meet the current zoning requirements. And so it's really about your property and why you can or cannot work within the zoning boards or the zoning ordinances within the city. And as much as I agree, you have, potential future issues, it's really about your property and why you can or cannot comply to the lower fence that is approved by the ordinances at this time.
We just don't want people hopping over the fence.
Okay.
We're on private property. We would like to keep it that way. We
Okay.
don't want to become the shortcut to anywhere.
Okay. And I'm just gonna keep rolling through these. Will strict compliance with the required setback unreasonably prevent the property owner from using the property for a permitted use, or will conformity with the regulations be unnecessarily burdensome? So the question is, if you're not allowed to put a 6-foot fence on there, is it unreasonably burdensome to you as a property owner within that district?
I would appreciate 6 foot rather than 4, yes.
Okay. Is the requested variance the minimum necessary to provide substantial justice to the applicant as well as other property owners in the district?
I think the 6 foot would suffice, the 6 foot height.
Okay. Will the requested variance cause an adverse impact on surrounding property values, or the use and enjoyment of the property in the neighborhood or the zone district?
No.
Okay. So we have a certain criteria. Just for anyone else, the same questions are coming your way, so be aware. Okay. That's really all I have, question-wise. I was at the site visiting. We did have a study session and talked about a little bit of the property and the uniqueness of it, and how, having a private drive and all that kind of stuff. Because most of the things that we go by is, how does your property relate to the right-of-way in the street and those types of things. And being a private driveway, there's no real right-of-way there. So, a little bit confusing for all of us. We took a lot of time to talk about this particular issue, so. Does anybody else have any questions or would like to join in? I kind of covered the bases, but there's a whole lot more there.
No, I think these questions are pretty clear, and I think the answers are also clear. I don't have anything further to ask the applicant.
Chairman, yes, point of question. Should we ask the applicant if they want the board to determine where their front yard is? To any extent, it may not already have been determined by a ZBA or the city. Because the request for variance is for variance from conditions applicable to a front yard.
True.
And they're in the record for the 1984 minutes, it's not clear to me that it was determined where the front yard and rear yard are for this particular property. And so, I don't know if it's appropriate.
No, I think you brought up a very good point. We talked about it earlier, but I did not bring it up
Right.
in my
Right.
initial question.
The
So.
question is, should we ask the applicant, would they like the board to make that determination of, where's the front yard, where's your rear yard?
Right.
I think in the study session, we talked about that. How do we make a determination on the request for the fence when we really don't know where the front yard is.
If,
And
Chairman, I'm looking for you, buddy.
Right, and this wouldn't be considered rezoning or anything like that, you know, those are the decisions that we're not allowed to make.
I have a question about what you're talking about, Vince. I don't quite understand if we were to ask the applicant about that issue. Whether, if, let's say they said no, they don't want us to do that. I don't understand how we have the basis of making a determination here if we don't understand which is the front yard.
And I think that's my point, is that we need to make sure, we can assume that the applicant believes where they want to put an iron fence is in a front yard, because they filed an application citing they need permission to build a higher fence in a front yard. My point is, it may not be clear in the record that that has been determined as a front yard, and we all should, you know, if the applicant believes, well, that's not my front yard anyway, I think we need to make sure we're all on the same page. That's my, I guess that's why I brought it up. Is if the applicant does not believe where they want to put their fence is in the front yard, let's hear that now. If they do believe it's the front yard, fine, then I think the board has to go through its assessment.
We were always told it was the front yard because that's the way our driveway face and a window. And so our front yard then is going to become their side yard. Or backyard.
Right, so I think it's the, excuse me, the board has the ability to determine the front yard based on conditions that are on the property, as opposed to when we usually do these with flag lots that don't have anything on the property. You may be able to take into consideration where their driveway comes in, what their address is, how are they oriented, that kind of stuff to determine what the front yard is, as opposed to when we have places which do not have a house located on them.
So traditionally, we would decide when the flag lot is created.
Correct.
Okay. And that would be before house orientation and things of that nature. Are
And
you
because of the orderly development of those lots,
Right.
it kind of appears as though that east side, like the applicant said, is considered the front yard. So I think as part of this process, as Vince said, is number one, determine the front yard, number two, rule on the variance.
So is this something we have to vote upon to determine the front yard?
Yep, you can do that when the public hearing is done.
Mm-hmm, okay.
It's not a finding of facts, it's a determination, and then it's the variance.
Correct. It'll be a whole separate interpretation, and
That's
it's a
fine.
two-step
Make sure.
process.
Yep, just wanted to make sure.
And we would deliberate upon that during the public hearing?
Not during the public hearing.
After.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
And the only reason I spoke up was to give an applicant an opportunity to
Mhm.
provide evidence or testimony as to if they feel that this fence is not in a front yard, to let the board know that as it proceeds with its review of the application. It sounds like it is, but I didn't want to.
No, it was most appropriate to bring it up. Probably should have made a note of it to bring it up earlier, but I appreciate that, thank you.
Okay. All right.
So, I think you've said that you feel that the front yard is out your front door.
Well, yes.
All right,
Okay?
Okay.
very good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then at this time, I will open our public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak in favor, when Dan is done, please approach the podium.
Great job, Dan.
Doing a fine job.
Ooh, I got a couple of cars that could do that kind of polishing. Mark Volkers, I'm one of the other applicants, and I thought, rather
Address,
than
please.
have you go through all the questions and get to me last, I'm gonna throw some of my comments up now as in support of my neighbor.
Mark, what's your address again, real quick?
312.
Thank you.
West 35th. I sat through the study session, and a couple things kind of stood out to me. One was a statement that said that what goes on our neighboring lawns, our neighboring area, currently a beautiful forest and soon to be a raised piece of property with 42 units on it, that was of no effect. And I understand the procedure elements. I understand that that you have to deal with our property, and how that else. But to not think of that as being an effect on this decision seems preposterous to me, and I just want to state it that way. I also noticed that a number of times you stated that these properties are unique. That's one of the reasons I bought there. It is unique. It is one of those hidden gems. I'm a little bit worried that it's going to be a little bit more tarnished hidden gem when it's next to 42 units. But it is a hidden gem, and it's I guess the thing that I would latch onto there, in its uniqueness, the granting of a variance is not a precedent, in my opinion. That has to be worried about it being throughout the city suddenly because of that. I feel that that's a favorable aspect in this area. There's not a whole lot of room on the application to fill in all the kind of things that you do. I'd like to speak to three things that for me were of interest in why I wanted this. And I don't care, we've stated my property is kind of strange as far as whether it's the front yard or the side yard and all those kind of things. And to be quite honest, I don't really care which one you want to call my front yard, which one you want to call my side yard. I landscape them all. I worry about them all. I got an acre and a half going the other side that I mow all the time. But I would just, I want to state, in most of Holland, in most of the lots that you live in, you don't have the aspect of people coming home down the road having their headlights sweep through your windows. I think that's an unusual circumstance, and it's one that we are anticipating. And we feel that a fence situation is going to help that. They're projecting in this development to, they have parking for over 100 cars. That's a lot of headlights. To me, that's not a speculation of it's going to happen. We know that type of interference, or whatever you want to call it, is going to happen. The height element, and in addition to being of stopping headlights and that kind of thing, it is the deterrence, or I think we called it the bundle of rights of securing our property, of trying to maintain privacy of some type. And I do, I would imagine that if you deny these requests, that all of us will consider building that 4-foot fence. But at the same time, that means either we're going to be calling 911 to say, hey, somebody hopped the fence again, here's the camera footage, or we're going to be repairing a 4-foot fence because the kid doesn't really care whether he clips it as he goes over it, or et cetera. So to me, the element of breakage is there for a short fence. Last one, expounding on the privacy. I thought it was interesting. I appreciate, actually, you made the comment, Dan. When you put out the appeal, put up the process, and when we make the applications, we allow for you to come and do site visits and kind of thing. And it's been kind of an interesting conversation amongst the neighbors of going, hey, did you see so-and-so that they were down the drive yesterday, and did you notice this and you notice that? I only see half a dozen people here, all right? In the last week, since the mailings went out to those within 300 feet, I've seen at least 20, maybe 30 people either drive, bike, walk down my private drive, right past my private drive sign. And I'm like, my usual recourse is, can I help you? Because they're not really shouldn't be there. And I'm not trying to be the, hey, get off my front yard guy, but I am trying to just say, hey, this is my property. I get to invite you on. I get to keep you off. And I feel that, the fence element of that is what will help that. I have no problem with setbacks. I have no problem putting a gate in it so that when I do make a friend on the other side of that fence, I can invite them through. I do have a problem with just walking through. Those are my elements. I appreciate your time. I'll take questions when it's my turn.
Of course.
Bob Johnson, I live at 314 West 35th. One of the comments that was made is that there's a plan to put a berm in. That's not true. There's a berm at the last lot where apparently, I wasn't here at the time, my understanding it was built up to keep water from going down into Pioneer Village the year before I moved here in 2009, that they had a pretty extreme flooding condition, which we've pointed out at the city meetings about selling 285 West 36th. So I think the berm was built at that time. I've talked to Cal, he told me that it was built at that time. Secondly, and this hasn't been said either, Cal has talked to the people at Habitat. The people at Habitat do not object to this fence. They're the developer of record. They don't care. They don't want to pay for it, but they don't mind. So we live in a world where nobody has any respect for anybody else anymore. We'd really like to get some respect so people don't wander through our yards. If I drove into your driveway, parked my car, and walked through your yard, you'd be out of your house. We think we deserve that same level of respect. I see two people sitting here who came down the drive. We didn't know who you were. We're kind of interested as to what are you doing. My wife's more into that than I am, but still, that's what we hear. Because since this has gone on, we've had several members of the city council who wanted to see that property, and they contacted one of us and said, will you meet us? We're happy to do that. And we did, and walked it with them. Walked our side, walked the east side. The east side's got fencing now, been there for a long time. It's extremely hard to navigate. But they contacted us, so we knew what to expect. So when people come down and you don't know they're going to be there, it's kind of like, well, what are you doing? We moved here specifically, when we moved to Holland, we moved to this area, said, it's a private area. We liked that. When I moved a truckload of goods up here from Charlotte, North Carolina in 2009, I put it in the garage because the people who lived there still had furniture in there, and I just said, just leave it there till you're ready to move. But I stopped by the police station and said, hey, when we put a whole bunch of furniture in there, I just want you to know it. And the police officer on duty said to me, he says, sir, we don't have any trouble down there. That's great to know. When you put 150 to 200 new bodies in that property directly east of us, you've got to understand it's going to change. It's going to change dramatically. Robert Frost said, good fences make good neighbors. I really believe that, so think about that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm next on the list anyways, but I'm coming up in support of all my other neighbors. I'm Barb Inman at 316 West 35th Street. I am one of the original owners, bought the property in '86 and moved in 89, built. All of our houses, all of our properties were told that the woods across the street was a permanent green space. Well, obviously that's not the way anymore, but we have been looking at a beautiful woods, a quiet neighborhood. When I first moved in 40th West, which is now Harbor Village, we had people, kids, adults, walking down our road, down our property at night, going through the woods, cutting through. We have high school kids going over to Holland High. We'd ask them, why are they on the private drive, blah, blah, blah. And we'd hear things at night. We'd be calling the police at night for loud noises after 11 o'clock, people walking down the street. A lot of you just do not realize that the road is part of our property. When you walk down the road, it's part of my lot, it's part of the 3 other lots there. So I don't go walking down through someone's yard to get where I want to go. I wouldn't drive up their driveway or a private drive to go somewhere. I also, a 6-foot-high fence would allow me not to see the backyards, the side yards of properties that have never been there and were never supposed to be there according to city. It would help, a fence would help with noise. We have heard people say we're not neighborly and that we're sort of elitist, that we've got this big acre lot property. Well, that's what we bought. That's what we purchased. That's what we paid taxes on. For me, it's been 31 years. And for the rest of these, it's been 20 or more. And I just don't understand why the 4 of us on the property have agreed that we would put our fences all together and make it look nice across the street, and it would keep our place private and safe. And I live alone now, and I don't really want to worry about people coming on my property and worrying about noise and so on. So I just would appreciate it if it's not going to interfere with anyone. It would just make me feel safe and better about living where I do live and where I chose to live 31 years ago. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to come and speak in support of this application? Any questions from the board?
No.
Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Not seeing anybody? Any other questions before I close the public hearing? All right, then. I will close the public hearing and we'll go into deliberation on this. Any comments from our board members this time?
I want to ask Dan about the city's regulations for this particular property. As I understand it, I just want you to confirm that the property owners at 318 West 35th are permitted to build a 4-foot open fence on their property line. Is that correct? And what they're asking for is a 6-foot fence, wrought iron fence.
Let me get my stuff here now. I just want to make sure we're talking about the right property at the right time. 318, which is what is Mr. Prince's.
318, that's the first one on our
Yep.
agenda.
There we are.
First one.
Okay, so if the board determines that the front yard is on the east,
Right,
where they show the orange line,
right.
they are allowed to build a 4-foot open fence or a 3-foot closed fence or solid
Okay,
fence.
Okay, oh, yeah, okay, that's the 3-foot closed or 4-foot open. Mhm. Okay, I just wanted to be sure that is allowed, and if they were to go ahead with that, they wouldn't even need to seek permission for that. Except they would have to get a permit, but it wouldn't be coming to the board.
That's correct.
Okay, that's my question for you.
I'm going to suggest that on each one of these, we make a determination of the front yard based on direction. and then proceed then with the variance deliberations.
Okay. John, did you have any questions or comments?
No, I think, might as well just step into the, what's the front yard, and then we'll probably talk some more.
Okay.
So does it take a motion? If it takes a motion, then I move that we designate the east boundary of this property, 318, to be the front yard of the property.
I support.
Okay.
I think based on our
Based on our understanding.
understanding,
Right.
precedent that's been set, how we look at things, everything we found in the ordinances, et cetera.
How they use the property?
How they use the
How they
property.
use the
How the
property.
houses are set up.
How the houses are set up, I think.
And even how.
I'm very comfortable with saying east side's the front.
Okay, then that's enough.
Any other discussion on that?
One question on that motion, if I could. This is Vince with the city attorney's office. I heard designate east side as the boundary. Is that the entirety of the east side from the house as the front yard?
Should we spell out the 318, 316, 314,
Well, yeah,
312?
We're only gonna take for three.
You're just saying the whole length.
Yes, it's the whole length. is what
From,
I-
all the way to the boundary across the paved private drive?
For 318, yeah, we're taking them individually. He's just saying the whole east
Yes.
side.
Yes,
All the way to the boundary?
that's what I intend, that's what I.
Thank you. I just want to make.
I would agree with that as the person who seconded that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and on what's on our screens here, it's that orange line that's from the north property line to the south property line.
Correct.
And this is oriented to the north.
That's my understanding of Fred's.
Yes,
motion.
that's
All right.
correct.
Okay, yes.
Then, I'm not sure we need a roll call. I guess we can do a roll call on this, but, I'm not sure it's necessary. Anyone, all in favor of the motion to, declare the east property line for 318, West 35th as the front yard? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. That's passed, and that's declared as the east property line. Now, on the discussion of the variance that is requested by the property owner. Any discussion on that?
So, Fred, are you leading to say something, or?
I wasn't gonna move to make a motion, I was just gonna say something about the
Please.
situation that this is in.
I saw you leaning in, so I'll let you go.
Okay. Well, I, as a member of the planning commission, we had to review the project that they're referring to, this 42 units, and it was a very difficult and contentious set of circumstances, and like most things, you can understand the problems from both perspectives of this property, and it was just a very difficult decision that the planning commission made, as I believe the same thing is true with the city council. My heart goes out to people. If I were living in these, on this property, I would also feel somewhat afraid, I guess. But the uncertainty of what's actually gonna happen would be bothering me more than anything, because you really don't know what's gonna happen. And so I have a lot of sympathy for people in that situation. And on the other hand, sitting on this board for as many years as I have been, we are faced with many unique situations, or at least unusual situations, and it's not unusual for us to see a request like this for a variance for a fence that is 6 foot instead of 4 foot. The setbacks are 1 foot one the side of the other. I mean, it's quite common for us, and I'm not so persuaded that this is such a unique situation that it would warrant our allowing a 6-foot fence in this situation. So I'm just stating my particular preference in this situation.
So, as I look at this criteria, I asked 5 questions earlier. It's our criteria. Basically what happens is, as a zoning board member, we are given certain criteria that we need to evaluate all the requests to. And so, if I may, I'm just gonna kind of walk through them and make comments about them, no findings of facts at this point, but, you know, is it a unique circumstances or physical condition? Well, first of all, if there is one denial in these questions, if there's one issue that we can't comply to,
1 of 5.
one of 5, then, you know, we cannot approve, and we need 5 to approve. So, I'm not sure if I'm stating that clearly, but here's the point. So, are there unique circumstances or physical conditions of the property that are not due to the applicant's personal or economic difficulties? If we said no, then it's a denial, and if we say approve, if we say yes, it's an approve. I think it's very unique. I mean, obviously, we sat here and we talked about it, and unique came out of our mouth 15 times in study session, and it's come out a couple times here. Is the need for the variance the result of actions of the property owner or previous property owners? And I look at this as no, and that's good for an approval. That's 2 out of 2. Where I get hung up is the next 2. Will strict compliance with the required setback unreasonably prevent the property owner from using the property for the permitted use? Or will conformity with the regulations be unnecessarily burdensome? This one I struggle with, because if we say yes, if we say no, excuse me, then we'd have to deny the approval. So that one I have a problem with, and the next one is the requested variance, the minimum necessary to provide substantial justice to the applicant as well as other property owners in the district, and that's, in my opinion, a no also. The 5th one we comply with, we say, will the requested variance cause adverse impact to surrounding areas, and obviously not. So to put this through, which I can see everyone's point of view, I'm just struggling with those 2 criteria, and I'm not sure if I'm articulating this very well, but maybe somebody could step in and help me along here.
I guess where I am looking at this thing is, from the strict compliance, is we don't know what really is gonna happen over there yet.
Right.
So for us to sit here and say, we should do one thing or another when we don't know what the development is going to be. Headlights, we've heard about that, but we don't know what the traffic pattern is. You know, there's some things that need to be developed first.
Okay, well, Fred, do you have anything?
No, I pretty much in agreement with what John said. But in addition to those 2, I think that the need for the variance is the result of the actions of the property owner. I think their perception of their difficulty and the fear of the unknown is what's causing them to request this. It's not anything else. It's their need, it's their actions that are causing them to request the 6-foot fence instead of the 4-foot fence.
And
so
this is one of those that go back and forth. We've always discussed.
Yeah.
Is it self-inflicted or not?
Yeah, so I think, I would say that that's a yes also, but.
Okay.
Well, I've heard,
That's why you make the big bucks, Dan.
yeah, all of none. I do think that, absolutely, these are unique properties, definitely unique. And is the need for the variance the result of actions? Well, again, we're looking at a 6-foot versus a 4-foot, or a 6-foot versus a 3-foot fence. And maybe I'm extrapolating here out to the other 3 applications. Looking at this one, we are talking about a 6-foot open fence versus a 4-foot open fence. Is it their actions? Well, of course, it's their actions, but the need for the variance, I don't personally feel that it's due to their actions. It's due to the definition of a front yard and how that's applied. And on fences, the intent of a fence on a front yard to not put in, tall or solid, fences on a front yard is, in a traditional, setup, it makes sense to me why you would do that. So again, the need for the variance is based on the uniqueness of the property, not exactly on their actions of, desire to install a fence. And contrary to what, I know some people might, and I know will disagree with me, and that's fine, they have absolutely that right. I do not feel that there is any, I don't want to take into consideration what's happening on the neighboring property. This zoning application doesn't really matter what's happening there. It could be a landfill. It could be a used car lot. It could be, not likely, of course, but it could be single family. Even if it were single family,
their backyards, now you're looking at their backyards.
You're looking at their backyards.
Right.
Even if they were single family homes identical to these types of homes, I think it's still a matter at hand. That they would be, if they're desiring to put up the fence, rather than their neighbor who could put up the fence without any application or any variance required, I think that makes that not of their property owners. I don't think the need for the variance is of the property owner's actions, when the neighbor could easily put up a fence without a variance. On the third proof, if you will, here, will strict compliance with the required setback. I don't think a strict compliance will reasonably prevent the property owner from using the property. However, I do feel that the regulation is unnecessarily burdensome. And that's the second part of that. That's the second half of that. That says, will this, it's not an and, it's an or. Will strict compliance unreasonably prevent the property? No, I don't think it will. Or will conformity with the regulations be unnecessarily burdensome? Yes, I do think so. So therefore, I would say yes on that one to approve this. And that's my opinion on that one.
I'm listening.
And then the requested variance, the minimum necessary to provide substantial justice to the applicant. It's not exactly an injustice, but yeah, I think it is. I do think this is the requested variance. They're not asking for a 10-foot, they're not asking for a 15-foot block wall. We're looking at in this case, it is 2-foot difference. It's still an open fence. And so to me, I think, personally, I think they meet all 5 criteria for a variance because of the uniqueness, because I do believe that this would be unnecessarily burdensome. And the big factor to me is that, yes, front yards, yeah, these are their front yards. I don't think there's any way to argue against that, that this would be, but it is the neighbor's side yard. And my front yard is shared, as I mentioned in the public here, or in the study session. My front yard, or those on those other neighbors of theirs on West 35th Street, their front yard faces a street and is not shared by another private property owner. This front yard does happen to be shared with another private property owner, thus making it a back or side yard of that other property owner. And the intent here for this ordinance on the fences, I think we're still meeting the intent of the fence requirements. I don't think it's too, again, I think it still allows substantial justice to the applicant. And that's where I would be coming from, and would make it difficult, obviously, because we do need all 4 of us to be together on this, one way or another. Because it takes all 4 of us to approve,
Yes.
and it takes all 4 of us to deny.
I don't think so. I think it takes all 4 of us to approve. It only takes 1 to deny.
What I read at the beginning, it says, it also takes 4 concurring votes to pass resolutions that either deny or approve applications.
Yes.
So,
What happens if we have 2, if we vote to approve and and one of us doesn't agree with that, and we vote to deny, and one of us doesn't agree with it, then what happens?
You need 4 to approve a variance, and that's clear, so
So it doesn't get approved.
it would not, I mean, we could vote it 2 different ways, but as long as you have to get to 4 votes to approve a
Motion.
variance under this section.
But it doesn't take 4 votes to deny the variance.
Correct, you could have 3 in favor of it, 1 against, and it
Okay.
would be.
It would be denied then?
Correct.
Okay, sorry. Then I may need to change that language to what I would read then, because,
Yeah.
yeah.
The other thing, Dan, that I would say is that there's other opportunities to make a difference in that area that they're doing, and I don't know if the fence is the correct way or the only way at this point. Whether it be landscaping, whether it be, the 4 foot, which would be allowed type of thing. There's other avenues to be looked at.
Okay, so we've all given up our reasons on
Got
how
2
we're
cents.
thinking.
With a change shortage, that's
Yeah, I
important.
know. There's a meme out there.
Then I'm gonna make the motion that we deny 318 West 35th. The strict compliance with the setback does not unreasonably prevent the property owner from using the property for the permitted purpose. There's a lot of speculation, but we can't deal with that. We have to just look at what the property is, and for what the property is being used for and what the request is being used for does not meet that standard.
I'll second. And is,
Any
is-
other findings of fact?
Well, that is one of the 5. You can certainly identify another if you believe it supports a
I'll-
denial, as the motion is to deny.
I'll try to add on to this. I do believe that the need for the variance is the result of actions of the property owner. And by that, I mean that the property owner perceives there to be a problem and wants to have a higher fence. And so that's the action of the property owner that I'm talking about. So I would like to add to that it is the needs of the property owner that's driving this. If you would accept that as a friendly.
Any other discussion? Then I'll call for a vote.
All right, so the motion is to deny. Bauer,
Yes.
Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Bedard,
Yes.
Sorek.
No. So the motion is denied. Is that correct?
Right.
It was, no variance was approved, so
The variance is not approved.
you could redo a motion to approve and take another vote if you so desired, but that's correct.
The motion didn't pass.
The motion didn't pass. Okay.
Keep it as a motion, and
Mhm.
then it makes sense.
So if we don't make another motion, then the request for the variance is denied.
Now I'm looking at Vince, because I'm in a unknown area here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to have a final determination on the application. So that needs to be by motion, and one motion has been made, and that did not pass. So the only other option is to make another motion on the flip side to see if that motion will pass.
Okay.
But I think that's the only approach.
Okay.
I could make a motion to approve this variance request, or the request for the variance to install a 6-foot open wrought iron fence on the front yard, where the fence height is limited to a 4-foot tall open fence. I'm not seeing a second for that motion, so that motion would be, that is a dead motion. Well, I'm in a quandary here as to what to do, I guess.
Yeah, we're looking at Vince. Vince,
No, I mean.
you feel the eyes on you?
Yeah, it's, you can only pass the variance with the concurrence of at least the 4 members. So no variance could be granted based on the motion to deny. And while that motion to deny did not have all 4 votes, that was not a motion to approve a variance. So I do think that a motion to deny did have proper support for the motion itself, because it was not a motion to approve a variance. Does that make sense? If it was a motion to approve a variance, you would need all 4 votes to do that. But because it was not a motion to approve, it was a motion to deny, you did have sufficient votes to carry that motion, because it was not a motion to approve a variance.
Okay.
We see it, it's a little backwards from what we're used to seeing. A lot of times we state these in the positive as approval, motion to approve, and see, and test it in that capacity. But I do believe that you've taken a vote, and that's what the vote is. It's not been passed, and that's what the minutes will have to reflect.
As long as you got us legal there, Vince.
So therefore, that, the request for a variance has been denied. Then we move to our next item on the agenda.
All right, this is for 316 West 35th Street, application number 20.13Z. Barb Inman is requesting a variance to install a 6-foot solid polyvinyl fence in the front yard of her property, where the fence height is limited to a 3-foot tall solid fence. The Zoning Board of Appeals may approve this variance if certain conditions are found to exist. 39-11.
Okay. And the applicant is here and approaching the podium.
Well, this seems a little bit futile, but when you talk about it's the property owners, I don't know how you put it.
If I may, self-created?
Yeah, yes, and you are partly right, because of history of what actually goes on that property. And I mentioned 40th West before, and until 40th West Harbor Village put their fence around their property, there was traffic on our property day and night. And our request for the fence is to keep property safe, and there is absolutely no reason why a nice-looking fence in someone's backyard, which will be the new housing development, why that would be offensive, why that would be whatever. A 4-foot fence is not going to keep people from jumping over. A 3-foot fence isn't going to either. It's why we moved to this property, to be in a private section of a beautiful town, but not have to drive everywhere. We just wanted to be in a quiet, nice section. I don't understand why having that fence is going to change anything for anybody other than we changed a rule. I don't get it. I just don't get it, why this whole property is being developed, and we have put all four of us and neighbors in Pioneer Village and the neighbors on the street that's going to be really torn apart in their neighborhood, the 36th Street. This is all being pushed on all of us after we went through meeting after meeting after meeting, and it still goes through. And all we're asking is to keep the little bit of ours private. I just don't understand why that makes that much difference to you people. And we have all written our answers to these questions. And I'm just at a loss as to why this is just a big deal to everybody when we're citizens that should be able to have our rights not infringed on. And I know there's going to be traffic on our property. People are going to jump a fence, a short fence, or jump. A fence isn't going to do anything unless we can keep a barrier there. I just don't want to be in my yard and have to worry about people coming through. I'm sorry, I just don't get it. I'm appalled and disturbed, and I don't know what else to say. And I know you're going to disapprove it, but I'm done.
What about the front yard?
Do you wish us to determine?
What your front yard is at your property?
No, it's my front yard. It's,
I have a question. The polyvinyl fence that you're looking, the 6-foot solid polyvinyl fence, looking ahead on our agenda, there are 2 more that are also 6-foot polyvinyl fence. Are they all gonna be built the same together, or? Okay,
we have all talked that all of them will be
it'll be one
butted together. It'll be one continuous
one
fence.
continuous fence, okay. So, not that it matter, I'm just curious.
Right.
Thank you. Any other questions from our board? No. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak in support of the application?
You know, something that, I've come to the conclusion that common sense isn't so common anymore. Something that doesn't come through here is what we're asking is for a variance. That doesn't mean we're gonna start building a fence tomorrow. The common sense thing here is that we would sit down with the people from Jubilee and Habitat and talk to them about exactly what their plans are. Their plans are right now is to have a sidewalk on the other side, which they are going to encourage people to use for exercise. That's fine. If they're our neighbors, we should sit down with them, and I would, and say, okay, we would like to build a fence. What exactly are your plans? Maybe we don't know, but we need to talk to them. They haven't been very forthcoming with us. We've had one meeting, and the second thing we had was just before the zoning meeting when they dumped on us the fact they were going to build 42 units. That's the first time we heard that. And they were going to have room for over 100 cars. That's the first time we heard that. They did not come to us the way the city told them to do. That did not happen. They were supposed to have 3 meetings. We had 1. So if Cal has had contact with the people at Habitat, and the people at Habitat have said, we don't object, then the thing to do, to me, would be to sit down with them and say, let's discuss this. Not let's just throw it up. Let's see something that works for what they're going to do on the developer side and what we do. Talking to each other is not difficult. You know, you guys talking, it's like, this is a really easy decision. I've never seen something that's as easy a decision made so difficult in my entire life. But I run into it everywhere. Because common sense, people don't use common sense anymore. It would really seem that what we're asking for the variance is the potential to build it. That didn't say we're gonna build it. It's gonna depend on what happens with that. If that property hadn't been sold and they hadn't decided to develop the way they're gonna do it, maybe we wouldn't build anything. We don't know. And it's not fear. Not fear to me. I know it'll happen. I've got a pretty good insight. So the question is, would you guys rather have us sit down and discuss with Jubilee what we're gonna do, what's good for both sides? Or would you just like us to put big signs in the ground that say, no trespassing? I think that's a little blatant.
Well, I mean, it's always possible for you as a group to speak to Jubilee. I mean, it doesn't require our board to say anything about that whatsoever.
But
You
if we have the
those
ability
meetings.
to build a fence, my biggest concern is based on the layout that they have. They have one road, the lights will shine right into our living room. I didn't realize it till I looked at it and plotted it. I said, wait a minute, we'll sit here in the evening when it's dark and we'll have headlights. Now, if there was gonna be 10 residences, that wouldn't be a big deal. But if they're planning for 100 parking spaces or more, that's a problem. You know, that changed my opinion from a steel fence to a solid fence, because I don't want to see that headlighting, those lights coming in. Nor do I want to hear as much sound. If you guys go where they build interstates and other places around this country, when they build an interstate, they build a fence that's 30 feet tall to keep the noise down, for noise abatement, and for lights. And all we're asking for is something similar to that. But that doesn't mean we're gonna rush out, write a check, start cutting trees down, drop a fence in there. We're gonna sit down with them and say, okay, let's talk this through. I don't even know where that fence goes. Does it go on the lot line? Does it go 3 feet back? Does it go 2 feet back? I don't know. But we'd sure find out. We're really asking for the option to do this. That doesn't mean we'll do it. It'll depend on what we talk to them about. Because if there had been more discourse, we may not be at this point. But there hasn't been that.
I think you make some very good points here. I think, in my mind, if I was in your position, I would go to them and discuss what you would like to do, and discuss to them that you want to put a fence in. Does it really
They
matter
know
if
that.
you pulled the building permit, or they pull the building permit, if you pay for it?
Well,
Think about that. That's
That's
not
an
bad. You're
interest-
sitting here
that's
telling
an
us that you don't want to overreact,
That's
and
a
you want to see
really-
what happens, and you have the ability to sit down and talk and reason
So
and so on and so
what
forth.
will you guys
So
do
what
about
is-
that?
So
that's an interesting solution.
I think it's the solution, to be honest with you. I would hope that you would pursue it.
Would you guys stand in the way of that?
No.
No.
I'll tell you the procedure for that. Over here, right behind, right on the side of you.
Oh, I mean, I've been so confused by your 5 questions, I couldn't answer those if somebody held a gun
And you
to
know
my
what?
head.
They're confusing to ask,
They
because
would.
there's negatives and there's positives, and it's really,
They're not easy.
they're not easy, and I apologize for any confusion I may have put on the
Okay.
table.
Let me explain that the property, as it's adjacent to yours, is not considered their front yard, and this is a PUD, or PRD, which regulates it itself.
Uh-huh.
So if they proposed a fence in the exact location that you are proposing one, that is 6 foot tall, potentially solid or potentially open, if it was approved as part of the development, they can install it. Doesn't matter who pays for it. So unfortunately, because of your configuration, it makes more difficulties with
Does
definitions.
it matter whose land it ends up on?
You can go right on the property line.
Okay, I guess my
Right on.
question is, if we did that, would we not take the responsibility to maintain that fence?
I
You
mean,
gotta negotiate that with
That would
them.
be, yeah. That would be
the problem with the fence is if it's on the property line, who really owns it? I mean, I understand the person who bought it, but I get questions all the time about people saying, there's a property, there's a fence between myself and my neighbor. I'm not sure who owns it. It's been up there for 25 years. We've changed 5 different owners. We don't know who owns it, who maintains it.
You know, and my head goes on, I watch the woods. I've watched the woods for the 9 years since I've lived there. I've seen trees fall down. I've gone in there with a chainsaw and cut them so that if somebody, you know, if there's a limb hanging down, so if some youngster walks through there, it doesn't fall on them. if a tree came down and damaged that fence, I would much rather be in the position to either fix it or call my insurance company and say, hey, I got a tree that hit a fence, I gotta replace it. Rather than rely on them to do it.
Yep, I understand. I understand. Once it is built, ownership is
Yeah, you gotta
irrelevant.
figure that out.
Yeah.
But that is an option.
We're just giving
for
you an option based with, because you're starting to realize some of the things that are tying our hands. And it's gonna be similar to all of the applications.
Uh-huh.
And so we all can kind of see, hey, this is not this property's front line. So it potentially, as owner of this property, could put up a 6-foot fence there. So we're trying to give you a little
I mean, you know.
idea. It sounds like you're going around the rules, but it's the rule.
One of the questions that comes is, you know, as far as use, we're not the ones who sold the property. And we're not the ones who proposed to build what they're gonna build. They wanna build what they call a quote-unquote pocket neighborhood. If it had been left, we wouldn't be here.
I think.
That's not our doing.
I think the variable is that you purchase a piece of property that.
I'm sorry?
I said, the variable is that you purchase a piece of property that unfortunately, whether you were told it was never gonna be developed, that the adjacent property was gonna be developed or not, that you took on that variable by building those houses there. There's a piece of property next to you that's undeveloped, and always would have a question mark on it until something actually transpired. So the variable is, you bought the property, that was undeveloped. I don't know what anybody told you was never gonna be developed or whatever, but with that not being developed, it's always a question mark of what it could be in the future. And so that's the risk, or potential risk, that you took by buying that unique piece of property.
Well, it just makes a damn fool out of me, I guess.
I'm not
You
trying
know,
to, I'm not
somebody
trying to be
asked me,
belligerent,
how would
I'm
I
telling
feel
you
if
what
there- if
what
there
my
were 3
personal opinion
residences
is.
put
Okay,
there,
I-
that wouldn't bother me.
I'd like to bring this back
Yeah, I
to,
should be talking to you anyway, sorry.
that's okay.
Sorry, Chairman.
No, I want to bring this back to
Thank you.
this.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else who would like to speak in support?
Mr. Chairman, I would like I'm curious if maybe we should just have all the public hearings for all of them first.
That's why I was thinking in the beginning of combining all
I
of
think we're
these.
all these are much more similar, correct?
The next three, or
Yes.
this and the next two, excuse me. I, on the question of front and side yard on the third one, 312, I think is a little different to me. I would answer that question a little differently. What a front yard and a side yard is for that property, personally. But, you know, we can go through the,
Well, I'm just saying, if we want to go through the public hearing and then close it, and then move to the next one, have its public hearing and close it, so that it's more
Fair enough.
streamlined,
I
because
see what
these
you're
are nearly
Okay.
identical.
okay. All right. Anybody who would like to speak in opposition to 316 West 35th? Seeing none, then I will close that public hearing. And you're saying I have the ability to open a public hearing for the next two on the agenda at this time?
I think it's dealer's option, but let's check with the attorney.
Because on our agenda, we do have item number 2, which is decision on above if not made at the end of the public hearing. So we could
Open.
open,
Close,
in my mind.
Decide.
Well, it's open. Once they're all closed, then you can deliberate
Right,
on them.
okay,
Right.
We've done that in the past, so.
all right. So I can open the public hearing for 314 West 35th at
Correct.
this time. Anybody who wishes to speak in support or opposed to 314 West 35th, we'll have that public hearing at this time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I
sir.
think you want to make sure the applicant has full, fair opportunity to speak in support of their own application. I think each of the applicants may have spoken in support of another application, so to the extent there are 2 additional properties, I think it's appropriate to ask the applicant, do they have something to say in explaining, and then certainly open the public hearing for each of those.
Okay,
Agreed.
thank you.
Sounds appropriate.
Sounds appropriate. Then I will ask the applicant for 314 West 35th.
Go ahead.
And again, Mr. Johnson, thank you.
I don't have anything more to say. I
Okay.
really don't.
We just wanted to make sure you had your opportunity.
Yep.
Sir?
We just wanted to make sure you had your opportunity.
Correct.
Oh, that's fine. I
Okay.
mean, you know, what goes through my mind is when this is over, I want to sit and talk to him and learn from him. You know, like this whole process, you guys hold all the cards. We're rookies in this whole thing. We learn as we go. So that's what's going on for the past year and a half. You know, is there stress in our family? Yes. Is there stress in these families? Yes. We're all neighbors. You know, I will tell you that most neighbors probably don't know who lives next door to them. The guy who lives at the end of our street, Dale Steckety, look, he's not part of our 4 houses, but we consider him a neighbor, as well as Jim Story and other people on down the street, and we help each other. You know, we like that situation, but we don't want it to get out of hand. And my fear with what they're going to do is, I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, and one of the reasons I moved from Charlotte, North Carolina, as I explained to him, was it did get out of hand. I've said it in the city council meeting. We had an 83-year-old woman raped 2 blocks from us. I had a fellow next door neighbor, Willie Scott, used to sit in his driveway with a 12-gauge shotgun to keep people away. And finally, the police got a handle on it. But it took time. So yeah, that's what we're concerned about. Am I concerned about homeowners? Probably not. Who am I concerned about? I'm concerned about renters because they're irresponsible. They don't take the same responsibilities as someone who owns a home. You know, my son's 16-year military. For 12 years, he was a renter. I'd go to his house and the faucets would be dripping. I said, "Are you going to fix this?" He goes, "No, I don't own this house." But when he bought a house, that changed. So there's a mindset that goes on there. It was originally billed to us that they were talking retired people, single people, and all of a sudden we're hearing about kids, bunches of cars. I'm like, what is going on? Why does it change so much? Why can't we get with one thing and work with it? But from what you've told me, and he's had, I mean, I'd certainly talk with somebody like Cal, who's done land developing, knows a heck of a lot more about it than I do, and sit down with the people at Habitat and say, okay, when we get going, if we would like a fence, will you guys take care of building it, and we'll pay for it? Whose feet is that going to step on? Anybody's?
Not ours.
Not ours.
You know, it
Right.
seems to me that the thing to do was, regardless of whatever the state laws may be, is people wandering over and looking at it and all the rest, is to sit down with the people from the developers and say, what's best for both sides here? Because we generally don't do things like that anymore. You know, we've become an us versus them society. Don't know why, but that's what's happened. I'm not fond of that. I may have had disagreements with one of our 2 neighbors that's small, but you know what? At the end of the day, we shake hands and we make it work.
Right.
And I think that's important. So if that makes more sense, John, I don't have a problem with it. I just don't.
I was just trying to give you something to pursue.
You know, I mean, is that stepping around it? Lord, I don't know. You guys know all these regulations better than I do. Does it provide us with a greater degree of security? Possibly so. May it provide their residents with a greater degree of security? Maybe so. I don't think it's a black and white issue. I think it's gray. And we live in you know, who's going to move in there? Why don't you guys give me a list? I don't know. And you don't know either. Responsible, irresponsible? I don't know. But I'll promise you, with that number of units, you're going to have a couple Lulus in there. You know, when we moved in, there was somebody in Harbor Village who'd come out at night, and I could count him. He'd chamber his semi-automatic, probably a Glock, and fire him into the air. And I'd call the police, 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and they go over there, and they didn't do anything because they don't know who it is. So after about a month and a half, how do we solve that? I went over and talked to the guy who was the manager at Harbor Village, and he says, I think I know who it is. And he terminated their lease and the problem went away. So there's a case of, he's not my neighbor, but we talked about it and made it work. And so is this much the same thing? I think so. Would we have been much happier? And particularly those poor people on 36th Street. That's the main reason I got into this fight, because of what they were going to undergo. And sit down and say, okay, guys, you want to build, let's talk about it. You know, I think that'd make a big difference. All I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so where are we? We are at the public hearing for 314 West 35th Street is now open. Anybody else who wishes to speak in favor or against? Seeing anybody, I'll close the public hearing for 314 West 35th Street. And I'll move down to 312 West 35th Street. For that, our applicant,
Mark Walkers.
Mr. Volkers.
So I have a couple of thoughts at the moment. I'm gonna go this way first.
Try to hit the microphone if you can. 'Cause
Sure.
we do have to record everything.
Sure, and I want to be on record. Side yard, as we've talked about 285. 6-foot fence allowed.
Correct.
Okay,
Dan,
Yes.
am I reading it right on the ordinance for 3911? Side yard in front of principal structure is 4 foot?
The side yard stops at the front of the house, and then you know what I'm saying? That's no longer your side yard, now you're allowed to go 6 foot up into the face of the house. So you could not continue with the 6 foot all the way. So I kind of think I know where you're going with this, but.
yes. Okay,
Because,
So I don't think, for what your intention is, that changing what the description of which one's your front yard is gonna pan out. You'll be able to do a portion of it, but once you get past the face of the house, then you have to go down to 4 feet or 3 feet.
well, 3 feet. 3 foot solid, 4 foot open, right, sorry.
so, I've learned a lot in the past year as far as procedure is concerned, and it's a bunch of crap, to be quite honest, and I applaud you for being patient enough to be part of this, because. The pay is not fair. Yes, well, that's a problem too, I guess, but. Would my application be more sensible to say, I have a 135-foot property line that qualifies for a 6-foot fence for probably about 100 feet of it, or 80 feet of it, I don't know, somewhere in that range? And I would like the variance to just extend it to the full line?
Well, I think we'd have to determine the quote, front side yard question
Correct.
for your property.
Correct, I'll go there too, but does that, and is that, so does that mean I would need to make a different application?
Based on, it looks like your house is 33 feet from the north property line, which therefore it could qualify that as your front yard. So you would be allowed, if that was determined to be your front yard, then you could run along your east property line with a 6-foot fence up into you got to the closest face of your house. So you'd be about 33 feet short of your northeast property line.
Right. So, again, is that a different application then? Or can I?
No,
can I
it's not. It's
ask
the same
board-
one.
Can I ask the board to sort of amend the?
Yeah, well, once you ask, you can
All
tell
right.
them which one you want to be your front yard, and
All
then you
right.
could say, so the only portion I need is this 33
And-
feet going north.
Forgive me if I'm deviating from the group here a little bit.
Someone is,
God.
someone's bailing.
And we can,
So,
and we can make
number
improvements
one,
with.
I would like you to designate my front yard as being my south border, right? Is that I'm thinking that correctly?
Would you put the map back up on our
Yes.
screen, please?
I think, Mark, I think you want your north,
North border, yes. I gotta, sorry, turned around.
Sorry
North
if I'm-
border.
coaching.
Thank you.
We're recording his password as dot, 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 dot,
Yeah.
dot.
Oh,
Can
I
I have
got
it?
7 dots.
Oh,
Now you've done it.
yeah, 1, 2, 3,
I think
4,
you got
5,
a D
6,
comma, Tiley?
There's a comma after D.
Yeah,
Yeah.
catch your login name.
Oh, that's what it is, yep.
Yep.
Instead of period.
Yeah, you did your password correct. I took note of that.
Yeah. Yeah,
7
Dan
dots.
could have typed it for you if you wanted.
There we go.
Yes, now this doesn't show the road.
No, because it's coming out of the driveway.
You can see the easement, you
Yeah.
can see his driveway right there, the road attaches to that. So actually, north is to the right.
Correct.
Yes, the long line to the right there.
And if I may, observe that Mr. Volker's property is the only one that does not have an egress easement on it.
On it, correct. I have,
Adjacent.
I have a deeded portion of the easement of where the
On your
drive
neighbor's
is.
properties.
And the piece that's in question that you've talked about, the, whatever property that has 310 or whatever. that's in the-
328, I believe it was.
Yeah,
West 35th, yes.
Right. so I guess I would like the board to affirm my contention that the north lot property line is my front yard. And then I'd like to amend my variance request to say that if I'm going to build a 100-foot fence, I'd like to finish the last 30 feet with the same look and feel that would make sense from a building perspective and from an aesthetic perspective onto that corner, onto my full property line.
I think we can
Any
take that in
questions?
after the public hearing for your property.
Sorry?
But we can discuss that after
Okay.
the public hearing for your property.
Any questions that you want to, do you need my 5? I think they're the same answers.
Oh, no, I think we're all good.
We've pretty much handled that.
Yeah, I think so.
One
Unless
more,
somebody thinks otherwise.
one more thing for the record. I know you don't get to vote, Mike. I appreciated a few weeks ago, before the vote, you made the statement, something doesn't feel right in my gut. Man, I got 4 people here. Hasn't felt right in the gut for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. All right. This time I will open the public hearing for, sorry, Mark, was it 312?
Correct.
Thank you. Lost my agenda there for a second. Open the public hearing for 312 West 35th Street for their variance request. Anybody who wishes to speak in support or against, please again approach the podium. Seeing nobody other than Dan swiping it clean, I will close that public hearing. So all public hearings have been open and closed through 312 West 35th, and now I will look for comments from our board. On the options for front yard, side yard determinations, we've already made one for 318 West 35th Street. We have not made a formal determination for 316, 314, is that correct? That's correct. Okay.
Could we see that map again, which shows all of these properties together along with the private drive?
Maybe.
I don't think it's in the first one. I think it's,
Nope, it's not there.
Imagine that. I think, I'll talk while Dan's
go ahead, John.
looking. I would say that I would propose
There
that
it is.
316 and 314 be the east, and then 312 be the north as front yards. So, open for discussion, but letting you know where I'm sitting.
Was that phrased as a motion?
Yes.
I will support that, actually, right there. So the motion and support to establish the front yards, we're gonna go all three at once. The front yards for 316 and 314 West 35th Street will be the east property lines. And then the property line for 312 West 35th Street would be the north property line for that property.
Correct.
Everybody understand that?
Mhm.
Okay, then I will take a vote on that.
Well,
All-
I'd like to.
Sorry, yes, sir.
I have some questions
Thank you.
about that. Dan, on the property, which is 312, how does the city ordinarily handle designating the front yard for a rectangular property that is on a road like that?
They do it when they create the lots. In this particular case, because we have no road right-of-way or no street that it's adjacent to, normally when we look at these, we look at its orientation, and actually we ask the applicant during the time at which we create the flag lot. As a piece of additional information, at one time when we had a drawing up here of the house, it looks like it's 28.5 feet from the east property line, okay? So that means it does not meet our front yard setback. We are 33 feet from the north property line, which does meet our front yard setback. So actually, it was probably the intention, when this was created, to have the north as the front property line there. So, I think his request is, to designate that as his. It makes sense because it will not create a non-conforming structure.
Right.
Um,
And-
Go ahead.
Furthermore, I hope that the property owner for 312 understands that once designated, that will be your front property line, that there may or may not be other city rules and regulations that apply once that has been designated.
But it does look like that when this house was built, that they had that in mind, because they did set back
Okay.
33 feet as opposed to
Just
the other
making sure he
side.
understands that we don't know what else is affected.
We don't know
Right.
what else, and I hate to
Well,
overwhelmingly support this and then realize later that you just really hurt yourself somehow.
and if I may point out, making that your entire north property line, your front lot line, if a 6-foot fence, privacy vinyl fence, were to be constructed with your current lovingly neighbor to the north of you, may not become a lovingly neighbor someday. If you wish to put a 6-foot privacy fence along that property line shared with 314, you would then need a variance. He
That's
wouldn't.
correct.
Correct.
That is correct. They are picking up on it.
And that's the crux to me, back to why I voted the way I did in the beginning, because I do see these as unnecessarily burdensome, as bureaucratic, little, just, I don't wish to game a system. Not that it is, I mean, to me, it's actually a reasonable to get with the neighbor and say, hey, we'll
Absolutely.
pay for it if you put it in. I mean, because that sounds like it might be the opposition. Although, the way I look at this, map here, Mr. Volkers may be talking to the wrong people. I'm not sure how far south that development goes.
It includes that house. It
Oh, it
includes
does
that
include-
house and that additional
All
property.
right, sorry for my ignorance there. I've heard about it in
Okay,
so that home is,
That home will be destroyed.
okay,
gotcha.
no longer be a single-family home with,
Correct.
okay,
In the interest of time, I second the motion
okay.
that has been made.
I think I did already.
Did you?
Yeah.
I think he's trying
Yes.
to tell you to speed
Okay,
up.
let's,
is what he's
yeah,
trying
we'll
to
get
tell
some.
you.
Sorry. All right, second, you thirded it.
I thirded it.
I think you had an open call, didn't you?
All right, we'll do a vote on the motion, which again was to declare the front yards. Any other questions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion has passed unanimously. Now we go into deliberation on 316 West 35th, the variance request.
I am still of the opinion that we're putting the cart before the horse, and we really don't know what's going on. So to grant a variance to something that I believe has already been mentioned, that we're not gonna build tomorrow and that type of thing, we need to find out what's going to be developed first before variance comes into play.
So is that a motion?
No, we had a motion?
Okay.
I'm seeking a motion, yes. I'm seeking a motion for the variance request for 316 West 35th Street.
I would make a motion that that's denied.
Support. Motion has been made and supported. Findings of fact.
Finding in facts, pretty much the same as we've dealt with before. The need is, let me get to my notes here. The strict compliance does not unreasonably prevent the property from using, the property owner from using its property as it's intended today. There are unnecessary, it's really not unnecessary, burdensome at this point, since we can only deal with their property. And the request, there's other things that could be done. I still go into the landscaping or changes that could be made to the property to do that and meet the needs that are out there before we go into granting a variance.
Dan, I have a question. If I wanted to put a 8-foot hedgerow of arborvitae across my front yard, would that be allowed?
Yes, as long as it didn't obstruct traffic and it wasn't in the magical triangle, which
The
is.
clear
If you're on
distance.
clear
Okay.
distance on a corner.
Okay. Just curious. So that there's no variance or
No,
for any sort of landscaping, screen wall,
correct,
vegetative screen walls,
correct.
if you will. Okay. And then I understand the concern on the headlights, but the hundreds of homes in the city, in many cities that live on cul-de-sacs might, they can't put a 6-foot wall or a fence in front of their house when they've got cars coming down shining into their front windows.
That's really something that's not in front of us today.
Right, I understand, but it's just, that parallel has been drawn, I just want to point out. That now with the designation, Mark can't put a 6-foot fence across his north property line to stop the headlights from his 3 neighbors coming into his front windows. So, sorry. Okay, any other discussion? Go for a vote.
All right, so the motion is to deny. Bauer,
Yes.
Bedard,
Yes.
Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Sorek.
No. Be a sticky wicket, I guess. Sorry.
I would say the motion passes, as it was not a request to approve the variance.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman.
So then we're done, correct?
Yep, that's correct. So then we move on to 314 West 35th Street. The variance request. Looking for a motion. Dave, you're on a roll. Next thing, remember what John said at the beginning of the study session, you're free till Christmas now.
Yeah, I make a motion and we deny that one as well.
Support. Findings of fact.
As we stated before, the compliance does not, it's not unreasonable to the owner to keep it as the way it is today. And the requested variance, there's other things that could be done to help the situation out besides granting a variance.
So the strict compliance is
Yes.
not unreasonably prevent them from enjoying their property as is
Yep.
intended.
Okay. Any other discussion? Sorry, you were creeping towards the microphone.
No,
I'm
just
looking-
getting
all right,
ready to
then-
vote.
Then we'll go for a vote on 314 West 35th Street.
All right, and the motion is to deny Bauer,
Yes.
Bedard,
Yes,
Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Sorek.
For consistency, no.
Motion passes.
All right, 312 West 35th Street, the request for the variance. Now, this request has been changed based on our definition of the side yard, so this request for a variance is now for the northern 33 feet of the east property line, as I understand it.
Yeah, actually, the way it was noticed, they're requesting a variance to install a 6-foot polyvinyl fence in the front yard, which they still would be in the front yard for that additional 33 feet. So it's the same thing.
Well,
We've just changed the designation.
yeah, it's the side yard in front of principal structure.
That's considered the front yard.
Okay, sorry, thank you. That's the, it's still section 3911, it's under part F. There's a table there, sorry, I got it up in front of me here.
Right. It's
Okay.
just, it's definitions.
Yep,
So be allowed to build the fence on that east side 6 foot high.
correct.
that's allowed anyway.
That's allowed.
Which is allowed. So we don't need to. I'm sorry. So we don't need a variance on that. The variance is going to be on the north,
It's going to be on the east property line.
east property line.
Any portion of the east property line north of the face of the house.
Dan, could,
So
for,
he can build 6
So-
foot.
could you bring it up again?
60% of his east sideline with a 6-foot fence.
Right.
As soon as it gets even with the house,
Mhm.
Yep, going
this
north.
request right now is to continue on with that 6 feet.
Correct. So it's 6-foot fence in the front
Correct.
yard,
All the ways to where?
all the way to this front northeast property line,
All the ways to
where he would join his neighbor that we've
Okay.
just addressed.
between 312 and 314.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. And
It's the same,
It's the same application, really.
it's the same discussion.
Yeah.
Yep.
so the variance, once again, just to be clear, would be to go all the way 6 foot, about 30 feet.
Yes.
I don't know.
I'd like a motion to deny. Sorry, buddy.
I second.
Okay, I think we're gonna continue on with the same findings of fact. Yep. That, it's, strict compliance is not, does not unreasonably prevent the property owner from using the property. And is the requested variance the minimum necessary to provide, substantial justice? And I said, no.
Okay, any other questions? Then we'll go for a vote.
All right, the motion is to deny Bedard,
Yes.
Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
and Sorek.
No.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you.
That's a long
And
one.
The next item on the agenda.
I'd like to make a point on the record that the applicant for 348 East 48th Street has requested that they be tabled.
Okay.
Is that a roll call, or what is that?
Entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we table that applicant as requested.
Table it
To next meeting?
To the next meeting.
to the next regularly scheduled meeting? Sorry if I'm,
Regular
Yes, no, you're
scheduled
good.
meeting.
I
Okay.
agree. We don't want to set precedent.
all right. And a
I
support?
second.
Second it? Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. And,
All right, so the motion is to table to the next regular meeting. Bedard,
Yes.
Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
and Sorek.
yes,
Motion passes.
I don't vote no all the time. All right. Approval of minutes for the June 25th, 2020 meeting.
I move we approve the minutes, June 25th meeting.
I second that.
Any other discussion? Nope. Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve the minutes from June 25th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Thank you. And is there another item on the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, election of officers.
I'd like to nominate our current president to remain in that seat, as well as our vice chair.
I second that motion.
Are you comfortable with staying as the vice chair?
Like a ball rolling downhill. We're doing awesome.
You can make
Hearing
it.
no nominations.
You can make your own
other
motion.
nominations. Fred, push it through, buddy. No.
All right, well then, we'll vote on the nomination. Go ahead.
All right, so the motion is to nominate Sorek as the chair and Bauer as the vice chair.
We had our chance for Mr. Fusak. He's not here. Sorry, interrupted. Go ahead.
Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
and Sorek.
Yes.
All right, vote passes.
Thank you for your confidence in me. Appreciate it.
Doing a good job.
And our next meeting date, August 27, 2020, in which we know we have at least one applicant already.
We have actually 3 or 4 by now.
Oh, my.
Oh, really?
No,
Okay.
great.
Is there any status of the, from last month's meeting, the dangerous hearing?
I don't have any current information. on
dangerous
that.
structures,
I think
I
they're
mean?
in the process of trying to get bids. I know that some situations didn't get bids.
Okay,
They didn't come in, so we'll get an update on that next month.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm looking for one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.